The story opens with two men standing on a vast plot of land. One clutches a shovel, the other a flag. A handful of adorable animals scamper around their feet. The main character, Suho Kim, goes by Lloyd Frontera in this world. This is the tale of how an ordinary civil engineering student transforms an entire world. The second man's name is Javier. Lloyd, formerly Suho Kim, was jolted awake by an alarm announcing him as the chosen one, granted a random wish by an absolute power. He scrambled to his feet, eyes flitting over the message, "You are now a character of Knight of Blood and Iron." Confusion washed over him as this mirrored a book he'd devoured the night before. The realization dawned, he was trapped in one of those web novels, inhabiting a character from a different world. Brushing himself off, he was met with a bone-chilling cold. An additional notification blared, scolding him for sleeping on the ground and neglecting his health. As he stood pondering which character he'd become, the only person living in such remote isolation and prone to sleeping outdoors was. Suddenly, Javier called out, "Master Lloyd." Javier explained he'd been searching for him and urged him to return to the manor. This was Javier, the protagonist of Knight of Blood and Iron. Suho was stunned to see him in the flesh, looking exactly like the renowned swordsman. However, he started as an unknown knight serving the country's lord and the eldest son of Baron Frontera. Suho soon discovered he was the notorious hooligan, Lloyd Frontera. Javier scoffed at the hooligan remark but conceded it was good that Lloyd possessed some self-awareness. With that, they headed back to the manor. On their way, Javier inquired if Lloyd had any clue how he ended up in such a state. Javier then elaborated that Lloyd had started drinking heavily in the afternoon, trashed the pub's furniture, and passed out on his way back. His lordship was worried sick and sent Javier to retrieve him. "You may be a rascal," Javier stated, "but you are his son. If you die on the road with your jaw dislocated, he'll be heartbroken." Touching the frigid ground, Lloyd yearned for heated ondal floors, a stark contrast to the harsh cold. Javier, about to leave him to rest, informed him he would report the incident to his lordship tomorrow. As Javier reached for the door, Lloyd stopped him, inquiring about the family's mounting debt. Javier dismissed this as a strange question and exited. Alone in the room, Suho, now Lloyd, recalled everything about this story. He'd finished the final chapter just last night in his cramped dorm. He knew what awaited Lloyd. In the first part, the Baron and Baroness fall victim to a deceitful con artist, losing their entire fortune and land, ultimately driving them to suicide. Lloyd then descends into alcoholism, becoming a beggar, and ultimately meets a bloody and tragic demise. Fury surged through him. What was the point of being an aristocrat if he was destined for such misery? He muttered, "This is as miserable as my life back in Korea." Another notification popped up. "You have been chosen to have a random wish granted by the Absolute." He pondered, what kind of wish could have landed me in the body of someone with such an end? The next morning, Lloyd's mother, Marbella Frontera, approached him, inquiring about the pub incident. Filled with concern, she asked him to apologize to the owner. To her utter shock and Javier's bewilderment, Lloyd readily agreed. As Javier and Lloyd strolled to the pub for the apology, Lloyd noticed the villagers' fear of him, some even hurriedly closing windows at his sight. A notification materialized, stating, "The villagers absolutely detest you." Lloyd questioned Javier's reason for accompanying him. Javier explained his lordship's orders to escort him and prevent a repeat of the previous day's events. "It's for the villagers' safety. I'm here to protect them from you," Javier clarified. Suho decided his initial priority was to shed this scumbag image. After all, a decent reputation wouldn't hurt when he eventually became a beggar. Lost in thought, he wondered if there wasn't a cheat code or skill he could exploit. Suddenly, a game menu popped up, presenting him with two options that displayed his skills. One of them read, "Human, Rowdy, Drunk." They reached the pub and entered. Javier noted a stark difference in Lloyd's demeanor compared to the previous night. Stepping inside, they were met with a sight of broken tables and a desolate atmosphere. Lloyd took a seat in front of the barkeep and offered his apologies for the previous night's events. The barkeep, assuming the defensive, couldn't believe Master Lloyd was apologizing. The barkeep stammered, begging Lloyd not to apologize. It was a complete about-face from the arrogant Lloyd Javier knew. Lloyd, however, maintained a slightly curt tone. "Well, I suppose I am sorry," he muttered, leaving the apology hanging in the air. Exiting the pub, Javier informed Lloyd that everything destroyed, furniture and decorations, belonged to the pub owner, who'd purchased them with his hard-earned money. "He likely won't be satisfied until he's compensated," Javier explained. He added another concerning detail. The pub owner's mother was sick, weakened by the harsh winter and further burdened by Lloyd's destructive behavior. As they walked, Lloyd noticed the frigid chill within the pub, a single fireplace struggling to warm the vast space. An idea sparked in his mind. The inside is quite cold, Lloyd remarked. A single fireplace isn't enough to heat an entire building, unless... He trailed off, the solution forming in his head. Back in his world, heated floors, ondal, were commonplace. Here, the concept was likely unknown. A civil engineering student, Lloyd had experience in construction, both from his military service and personal projects. This, he realized, could be the key to not only solving the pub owner's problems but also potentially paying off his family's debt. His excitement bubbled over. "Let's go back to the pub, Javier," he declared. Javier, surprised by the sudden change of plans, asked the reason. "To get my first order," Lloyd announced with a newfound determination. As they walked, a flurry of notifications flooded his vision. One proclaimed, "Your true journey has begun." Another announced the activation of an RP system, relationship points, which could be earned by improving his relationships with key characters. His current RP was 0. Lloyd scanned the alerts about relationship points, learning he could improve his standing by building rapport with key characters. He glanced at Javier's approval rating, a dismal -30. Attempting to butter up Javier, Lloyd complimented his appearance, but it backfired, dropping Javier's rating by another point. Deciding subtlety wasn't the answer, Lloyd shifted gears. At the pub, Lloyd introduced himself to the owner as a builder, proposing a deal. He'd waive all construction fees for repairs to the damaged property in exchange for a signed contract. The owner eyed him suspiciously, then used a skill, stone wall, heart. Disappointed that his grand plan had hit a snag, Lloyd considered resorting to his hooligan persona. Instead, he played on his image, saying, "Come on, we'll be doing business together frequently. Let's build some trust, shall we?" The owner, swayed by this approach, finally signed the contract. Reassured, Lloyd declared, "You've made the right choice. I won't let you down." He headed outside, shovel in hand, to survey the area. Javier, however, confronted him. "You threatened the owner. Are you already thinking of new ways to cause trouble?" Lloyd countered, suggesting Javier consider cognitive distortion, the tendency to believe someone will behave poorly based on past actions. "It's prejudice fueled by negativity," he explained. Javier wasn't swayed. "It's not prejudice, it's based on experience and statistics." Lloyd, undeterred, declared, "I'll make them smile, the owner and his mother. That'll be the foundation for making money." Internally, he justified his actions. Their smiles would be the key to his financial success. Single-handedly starting construction on a small house, Lloyd quickly realized his body's weakness. Seeing him work, Javier was surprised. Could Lloyd truly be fulfilling his contract? Exhausted, his body trembling, Lloyd refused to rest. He needed to cut wood. Javier intervened, offering assistance. Using his technique, Javier swiftly chopped the wood into pieces. Impressed, Lloyd asked, "Why not help me dig as well?" Javier thought, "Instead of thanks, he gives me more work. Maybe I shouldn't have bothered." Nevertheless, Lloyd convinced him that faster completion required teamwork. Together, they diligently worked, eventually constructing the house. Proudly, Lloyd placed his brand logo on top. Witnessing the finished house, the owner's mother was delighted. The heated floor eased her joint pain. The owner expressed his gratitude, stating it had been a long time since he'd seen his mother smile like that. Javier, observing their happiness, mirrored Lloyd's earlier words. What's going on with Lloyd? A change in speech and manners. He works hard, keeps promises, and now, genuine smiles. His approval rating for Lloyd rose by 2 points, and Lloyd earned 36 RP for slightly improving their relationship. Lloyd, with a knowing smile, glanced at Javier, aware of what he was thinking. This house, he thought, was just the beginning. It would be his model house, a showcase for his innovative technology. Soon, a crowd gathered around the house, inspecting the ondal floors. Lloyd, with a table and chairs set up, approached the villagers, offering installation in their homes. He displayed style and style B options, even enticing them with a 10% discount for combined orders. However, the villagers remained skeptical. Suddenly, Lloyd's father, Arcos Frontera, arrived, interrupting their conversation. He demanded to know what Lloyd was doing. Lloyd sat at the long dining table with his father, relieved he'd avoided him until now. His father's question was blunt. "All right, tell me what you're up to this time." The pub owner ordered an ondal room, Lloyd explained, and I delivered it. His father's gaze narrowed. "And the other villagers? Are they placing orders too?" "Seems you're well informed," Lloyd replied, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "These are people we need to look after," his father declared sternly. I won't tolerate any lying or tricking them. No such plans, Lloyd assured him, rising to leave. If we're done here, I'll excuse myself. As he reached the doorway, his father called out, "Is this because of our family situation? Don't worry, I can get us out of this trouble soon. Don't get involved." Those words struck a chord with Lloyd. His original father, Suho Kim, had said the same thing. Focus on studying, don't worry about money. Suho had believed everything would be alright, leading to a life of misery Lloyd wouldn't repeat. Turning around, he met his father's gaze and said firmly, "Please, don't give up." "Neither will I." He wished he could have spoken those words to his true father then. Walking down the corridor, Lloyd mentally calculated orders, style and B ratios, and half payments received. Two approaching figures caught his eye, the money lenders. They passed him coldly. Lloyd turned to watch as they confronted his father. 5 days overdue, one sneered. "If you keep dragging your feet, we'll take action." "Sell some of your possessions," the other suggested. "You'll get some cash." Lloyd listened from outside, a smile playing on his lips. "Perfect timing," he murmured. He checked his current RP, pondering how to use it. Suddenly, a message appeared: invest RP to gain abilities. Skills like soil mechanics, hydraulics, and basic surveying, based on his existing knowledge, were listed. He clicked on basic surveying and basic design. With surveying, he wouldn't need a GPS unit, he could assess the land himself. Things would definitely get easier. However, a concern arose. Javier alone wouldn't manage all the construction. Summoning heavy machinery with his knowledge sounded tempting. But a pop-up explained that required RP. He needed more RP, and that meant gaining favor with key characters. Back in the room, a moneylender slapped his hand down, proposing to sell the Baroness and her ladies for a hefty sum. Lloyd's father, enraged, stood up. Lloyd walked in, addressing the lender. "Being a lender doesn't excuse bad manners," he stated coolly. The lender scoffed. "Who are you to interrupt?" His father identified Lloyd, but the lender brushed him aside. "Get back in your discussion." Lloyd, however, demanded, "Show me your warrant." He explained, "Royal Family and Nobility Act, Article 3, Clause 6, nobles have the right to protect their interests. Entry without a warrant is trespassing." The moneylenders were dumbfounded, having never heard of such a law. "Let's verify it," Lloyd suggested, ushering Javier in. "Javier, cut these trespassers' arms off." One sputtered, "We'll sue you." "Lawyers will likely be on our side," Lloyd countered. Both moneylenders scurried away, defeated. Lloyd's father, still tense, questioned his actions. "What if we can't stave them off?" Lloyd placed a bag of money on the table. "I plan to give it to you after collecting all payments. It should cover a large portion of this month's interest." His father's face twisted with guilt. He believed Lloyd was extorting money, but Javier intervened. "Fear not, my lord," he assured him. "Master Lloyd will fulfill the orders." Leaving the room, Javier asked Lloyd, "How did you know about that law?" "Picked it up somewhere," Lloyd hedged, recalling the book from Javier. It detailed the Baron and Baroness' suicide, followed by loan sharks attempting to sell their bodies. Javier, invoking that same law, had cut off their heads, later acquitted by the judge. Knowing the story was a definite advantage. A notification popped up. "Baron Frontera's approval rating of you has increased by 6 points. You earn 60 RP for improving your relationship with a key character. Current RP, 61. Under the cloak of night, Lloyd stood alone in a clearing, ensuring no one observed him. He requested to see the summoning game. A notification materialized before him, offering a simple start button. Clicking it, a loading icon appeared. Lloyd wondered if this was a magic circle, but its miniature size surprised him. His expectation of a grand display was shattered as a rabbit-like creature emerged. Disappointment clouded his features as he turned around, but the creature spoke up. "Don't write me off yet. I can be helpful." Lloyd raised an eyebrow. "Show me what you can do." The small animal chomped on something, spitting out 2 papers, its user manual. Peepodong, the name proclaimed, revealing its identity as an adorable hamster. The instructions explained Peepodong's abilities and how to change his size with sunflower seeds. One red seed triggered giant growth for up to 12 hours, while its blue counterpart shrunk him back down. Feeding the blue seed before the time limit was crucial, with each color combination costing 1 RP. Testing the system, Lloyd fed Peepodong a red seed. The hamster grew rapidly, reaching a staggering 30 feet in height. Excitement surged through Lloyd. He had his own heavy equipment. However, a concern arose. If anyone saw this behemoth, suspicion would be inevitable. He decided to carry a summoning book, masquerading as a summoning master if questioned. The next morning, Lloyd assembled a group of soldiers in the courtyard. These were the 30 soldiers under Lord Frontera's barony. He knew their reputation, paid simply for idleness. It perplexed him how a financially strained baron maintained such unproductive personnel. Regardless, Lloyd saw an opportunity to utilize them for his construction project. Raising his voice for maximum impact, he addressed the soldiers. Listen up. You are all soldiers, forming an army. But what is the purpose of an army? To work. He recalled his own army days, filled more with mundane tasks like digging holes and weeding than actual training. See that pile of clay? I spent all night unearthing it. Well, mostly Peepotong did. He outlined the construction project they would be undertaking. Disappointment replaced the soldiers' initial apathy. Manual labor awaited them. Suddenly, a voice interrupted Lloyd. Master Lloyd, what are you making my men do? It was Newman, the senior knight in Lord Fronter's barony. Lloyd had anticipated this confrontation. Newman was one of 3 knights, himself, Bayern beneath him, and the novel's protagonist, Javier Asrahan. While Javier and Bayern remained loyal until the bitter end, Newman was the first to betray the Baron. He sold sensitive information to conmen, leading to the current crippling debt. Lloyd met Newman's gaze. Exactly what it looks like. They're working. Newman scoffed. You have these honorable men covered in dirt. As their commander, I won't tolerate this. I have my father's permission, Lloyd countered. Whether you've charmed his lordship or not is irrelevant, Newman pressed. But may I remind you of your past behavior? I see no reason for you to exploit these men for personal gain. Lloyd's temper sparked. You want to fight. He grabbed a shovel and flung dirt at Newman. This audacious act ignited Newman's fury. His face reddened with rage. Lloyd, determined to push the knight further, taunted, forget about ranks. Let's settle this. He issued a challenge, a duel. Newman's voice was laced with venom. You'll regret this. Later that night, Lloyd confessed everything to Javier. So, you're dueling Sir Newman in a month. Confident about winning. Are you crazy? Lloyd scoffed. Newman's a low-level sword expert who uses the mana heart skill. Me, I'm nobody. What do you think? Javier considered cutting Lloyd down then and there. His sudden defiance against Newman, followed by the calculated request for separation, and now his lack of confidence. It all seemed too deliberate for a return to his old hooligan ways. Yet, Lloyd had subtly orchestrated events, separating them, assigning Bayern to supervise the soldiers, and now admitting his lack of confidence. Javier clenched his fists, wishing he could just eliminate Lloyd. There's something I need you to do, Lloyd said, breaking the tense silence. Teach me how to use a sword. Javier's refusal was immediate. First, my job is to watch you. Second, if scum like you learn swordsmanship, everyone around you will be in danger, even if I can cure your insomnia. Lloyd countered. Javier's eyes widened. How do you know about that? Actually, Lloyd read it in the book, The Knight of Blood and Iron. He also read that knights are ranked in 4 tiers: low-level sword expert, mid-level, high-level, and sword master. While Javier was on the cusp of becoming a master, bordering on superhuman with hyper-acute senses that prevent sleep. It's a side effect, basically. He reluctantly agreed, certain of Lloyd's failure. He'd tried every imaginable cure, exercise, therapy, herbs, aromatherapy, nothing worked. Still, Lloyd's knowledge intrigued him. Don't be surprised if you fail, Javier warned. I've tried everything. Lloyd had a plan. He'd reviewed the Rainforest Concrete textbook. Apparently, humans needed at least 18 times more sleep than magic users. With a silent magic spell, he scanned Javier's aura. It confirmed the textbook's claim. The next morning, they reached the training grounds. Javier instructed Lloyd to run 50 laps without speaking. Lloyd surprised him with his compliance. As he ran, Lloyd reminisced about his harsh past in Korea. No welcoming family, tiny boarding house room, endless days spent hauling bricks and unloading trucks, anything to survive. He'd clung to the hope of a better future. Compared to that pain and despair, this was a cakewalk. Witnessing Lloyd's unwavering determination, Javier decided to teach him proper swordsmanship. This newfound respect increased his approval rating for Lloyd by 1 point, earning Lloyd 18 RP. His current RP stood at 29. Meanwhile, Newman confronted Lloyd's father. Disrespectful behavior, Lloyd's father fumed. 5 generations you've protected our family. Lord Fronter questioned his earlier optimism. Maybe Lloyd hadn't truly changed. There's no reason to stop the duel, he sighed. But Newman, as he is my son, please, go easy on him. Newman smiled, a predatory smile. Duels rarely went as planned. He intended to kill Lloyd. And after that, the Baron and Baroness too. Suicide it would appear, of course. 1 month later, the day of the duel arrived. Newman eyed Lloyd, who stood shovel in hand. Ready for your beating, boy? Ready to knock your lights out? Lloyd retorted with a smirk. The soldiers gaped in astonishment as Lloyd approached Sir Newman, shovel in hand. What kind of joke was this? Javier, however, understood. Lloyd's late-night request to the blacksmith finally made sense. Lord Frontura, consumed by worry, saw the whole thing as a childish prank. But Javier knew better. He'd witnessed Lloyd's dedication over the past month. Pre-dawn training sessions, tireless runs around the construction sites to teach the village engineers about Ondal, and late-night practice sessions until exhaustion forced him to sleep. This wasn't a joke. Lloyd was dead serious. Concerned, Lord Frontura called for the duel to begin. Lloyd and Newman stood their ground, a stark contrast in stances. Lloyd seemed awkward, while Newman exuded practiced precision. Newman, confident in his skills, launched the first attack. To everyone's surprise, Lloyd deflected it with his shovel. A flicker of doubt crossed Newman's face, replaced by a sneer. Just luck, he scoffed, attacking again. Once more, Lloyd skillfully deflected the blow. Javier noticed something peculiar. Lloyd's movements were efficient, practical, a stark contrast to traditional swordsmanship. It felt like a fighting style honed for real-world combat, a modern evolution of swordsmanship. What's the big deal? Lloyd thought. This is basic Korean hand-to-hand combat. Bayonet training. And besides, a shovel can be a beastly weapon. Not only can you use the wide blade as a shield, but it can chop through trees with ease. Lloyd's strategy was threefold. First, the trusty shovel. Second, the rudimentary sword techniques he learned from Javier. Third, a hidden weapon, the skill expansion, shoveling level 1 ability. Training with Javier had raised Lloyd's RP, granting him this bonus. Watching his son work hard for the first time, the Baron and Baroness also contributed RP through their increased approval. Newman's frustration grew with each deflected attack. He unleashed his trump card, the Mana Heart skill. For a regular person, mastering this skill took years of dedication. But even with this powerful attack fueled by mana, Lloyd stood his ground. Javier was speechless. Lloyd, a complete novice, had blocked a Mana Heart enhanced attack. This wasn't possible. But the evidence was before his eyes. Newman felt his strength drain away. This was the Asrahan core technique, the skill that made Javier the strongest warrior in the land. But Lloyd, wielding an unorthodox weapon, was somehow absorbing his mana. Seizing the opportunity, Lloyd launched his first offensive move. His shovel connected with Newman's face, knocking out several teeth. This was followed by a relentless barrage of 10 more blows. The onlookers were stunned. Lord Frontura, stammering in disbelief, declared Lloyd the victor. Still reeling from the shock, Lloyd stood over the defeated Newman. "Time for your punishment," he growled, raising his shovel to slam down on Newman's head repeatedly. Lord Frontura, horrified by the brutality, pleaded with Lloyd to stop. While Lloyd pummeled Newman, the soldiers struggled to restrain him. "Has he lost his mind?" bellowed Bayern. Finally, Lloyd relented, saying, "Fine, I'll stop." But as the soldiers backed away, he resumed the beating. Javier, observing Lloyd's methodical targeting of every vulnerable spot, noticed a chilling calm on his face. It seemed Lloyd anticipated these events, like he possessed omniscience. Javier recalled a conversation from 15 days before the duel. Lloyd had requested instruction in the Asrahan core technique. Explaining his understanding of the skill, Lloyd shocked Javier. "How do you know about this?" Javier stammered, convinced Lloyd couldn't have learned this through conventional means. "You say all these things when you're asleep," Lloyd explained. Javier dismissed it as sleep talking, but ultimately refused to teach the forbidden technique. Lloyd said to him that "you won't teach me this skill because it is not complete yet." Lloyd proposed a deal, help Javier perfect the technique in exchange for his assistance. Confused by Lloyd's knowledge, Javier listened intently. "You're trying to combine absorbed mana with your Mana Heart, but it repels it," Lloyd explained. "Think of it as a foreign object. Don't try to merge it. Instead, condense it externally for later use. Imagine it like an auxiliary engine next to your main one." Javier's mind reeled. How did Lloyd know this? Right then, with Lloyd's guidance, Javier achieved a breakthrough, successfully condensing mana for the first time. His approval rating for Lloyd instantly jumped by 5 points. Javier pondered how Lloyd, armed with this knowledge, planned to defeat Newman. Lloyd's father, red-faced with fury, roared, "Do you not hear me? Stop sullying this knight's honor. Look under the tablecloth, father," Lloyd replied. "Then decide if your words still hold merit." Several letters lay there, exchanged between Newman and Tords, the man who swindled Lord Frontura in a real estate deal. The letters detailed their plans to forge documents and exploit the barony's finances. Lord Frontura reeled in shock, the true state of his finances laid bare. Newman, bewildered, wondered how they discovered his hidden letters. Lloyd, having read this part in the novel beforehand, smirked. Peepodong, his loyal giant hamster, had unearthed them the night before. Gazing at his father, Lloyd mused that he truly was the kind, trusting soul the book depicted. Most would demand Newman's execution. But Lloyd believed a kind leader wasn't necessarily a strong one. Allow me to offer a suggestion, Father, Lloyd said. His father, desperate for a solution, readily agreed. Let's release a vicious mouse at Newman, Lloyd proposed. If it finds him guilty, he'll be exiled. Otherwise, he'll be demoted to soldier and have a chance to redeem himself. The onlookers scoffed. What harm could a mouse inflict? Lord Fronterer, however, agreed to Lloyd's plan. Turning to Newman, Lloyd asked, any objections? Newman, relieved, replied, no, I am grateful for your mercy. Lord Fronterer, however, questioned the effectiveness of such mercy. Won't a guilty party simply exploit your leniency? He reasoned. Newman mirrored the thought, harboring plans to assassinate the Baron and his son. A sly smile played on his lips. Lloyd noticed the smile and said, it's good to see you smile, though it will be your last. Newman's eyes widened. What do you mean? Lloyd produced a red sunflower seed and tossed it in the air, along with Peapodong. The best way to ask for forgiveness, Lloyd declared, is to remember that there is none. Peapodong grew larger with each passing moment, filling the sky. The crowd gasped in astonishment as the giant hamster descended upon Newman. Exile, declared Lloyd, watching as the rotten apple of the land was finally removed. The next morning, Peapodong roamed freely around the village. Javier approached Lloyd and asked, what is Sir Peapodong doing? He's carving out a road, Lloyd explained. Now that the soldiers are actually working, the real project can begin. You see, there was a city called Rome, and they were known for their amazing roads. I'm going to use the same method they used to create the Appian Way. This road will stretch from the Lord's mansion all the way to the base of the eastern mountains. Javier raised an eyebrow. Why a road, Lloyd? Just wait and see, Lloyd replied with a grin. This will put our land on the map. Javier studied Lloyd intently. Speaking of the map, how did you suddenly acquire so much knowledge? You built a heating system in people's houses, summoned a high-level creature. Are you really Master Lloyd? A notification popped up in Lloyd's vision. Warning, Javier has suspicions about your identity. Panic surged through him. He'd read in the novel that if Javier discovered he wasn't the real Lloyd, someone who had taken over his body, he'd be in serious trouble. But Lloyd wasn't one to give up easily. He had a special skill for situations like this. He activated the stubborn insistence skill and began questioning Javier. I've been studying when no one is looking, you know, Lloyd bluffed. Javier chuckled. The only thing you studied when no one was looking was the bottom of a wine glass. Do you watch me 24/7? Lloyd countered. Then how about the summoning incident? Javier pressed. Only skilled people with years of experience can pull that off. And how come you're good at conjuring mana in your early 20s? Lloyd deflected. Did you have a teacher? Javier frowned. I wouldn't call myself a genius. Lloyd seized the opportunity. So, you can be a genius, but I can't. Javier was speechless, leaving Lloyd victorious in this verbal joust. Look, Lloyd said, I have things to do. Can you watch the road project while I'm gone? Bayern stepped forward. I can handle it, Master Lloyd. As Lloyd prepared to leave, Javier spoke up. Let me come with you. Lloyd grinned. Actually, you're definitely coming with me. Where are we going? Javier asked. To retrieve our stolen money, Lloyd declared. Their destination was Ludenia, a small border town. Their target, towards the real estate conman who swindled Lord Fronterer. Inside a dingy bar, Towards nursed his sorrows. Gambling had taken a significant chunk of his ill-gotten gains. That's how gambling works, isn't it? His bodyguard remarked. After all, that's how you made your fortune. But now I can't even afford your salary, Towards muttered. Nonsense. I have enough money for both of us, Towards lied, desperate to avoid losing his muscle. Suddenly, the bar door swung open, revealing Lloyd. Towards eyes widened in shock. Who are you? He stammered. Lloyd Fronterer, Lloyd replied coolly. Towards bodyguard bristled. Shall I kill him? No, let's get out of here. Towards shrieked, scrambling for the back window. The bodyguard hoisted Towards through the window, but as they landed on the ground, they found Javier waiting for them. Don't move, Javier warned, drawing his sword. One step and you're dead. Towards bodyguard scoffed. You look like a child. Do you even know how to hold a sword? Lloyd watched from above, remembering how Javier struggled against the dark enchanter's gravitational magic in the novel. But this time, Javier was equipped with a triple circle mana heart. The bodyguard's punch landed harmlessly at Javier's feet. The contract is null and void, bodyguard declared. With a burst of mana, he launched himself into the air and disappeared. Towards trembled before Javier. Javier asked Towards, do you know what you've done? Fraud against a noble family is a serious crime. Javier raised his sword, ready to deliver punishment. But before he could strike, Lloyd intervened. Javier stared at Lloyd, surprised by his sudden compassion for a crook. In a dimly lit room at night, Lloyd kept Towards tied to a chair. Acting sweetly towards Lloyd reassured him, "You don't need to be so scared. Everyone gets a little greedy sometimes." He also remarked, "To behead people for it, I think the law is a bit harsh." Towards asked, "Are you going to forgive me?" Lloyd replied, "I won't take you to court." With a smile, Lloyd added, "I bet you're grateful, so you'll hand over all of the Baron's remaining assets, right?" Towards felt relieved, thinking Lloyd was letting him off the hook. However, Lloyd said, "We're just getting started." He explained that Towards needed to do something for him. Towards, now willing to do anything for Lloyd, eagerly awaited instructions. Lloyd placed a contract in front of him and asked him to sign it. When Towards inquired about the contract's contents, Lloyd explained, "It's just your normal employment contract, with a paid salary. However, 80% of your salary will be kept as repayment for the money you defrauded from us." Lloyd added, "After just 520 years, you'll be all paid up." Towards was terrified by this revelation. Javier understood why Lloyd spared Towards' life. Lloyd thought, "I'm not stupid enough to kill the guy who owes me a debt." Towards remarked that he had never seen such a disgusting contract. Lloyd responded, "Well, I can't force you to sign it, so let's go to court then." With tears in his eyes, Towards reluctantly signed the contract. On their way back to town, Javier mentioned that they had obtained some money from Towards, so they shouldn't worry about interest for a few months. Lloyd disagreed, saying, "No, this money will be used to invest in hiring more men. We only have 30 people, which is not enough." Lloyd thought that even if he put up a help wanted sign, the villagers wouldn't apply because of his reputation. A few days later, Lloyd put up a board seeking workers, offering a salary of 20 gold per week. To Lloyd's surprise, a long queue formed. He wondered, "Don't these people hate me?" Javier explained, "They do, but you've gained their trust by delivering affordable ondals on time, taking care of the trader, and even calling upon a summon." He added, "Now you're known as a trustworthy and talented man." The man came forward to sign the contract and expressed his gratitude. He mentioned that their child used to suffer from severe colds during cold spells, but thanks to Lloyd's ondal system, they no longer had to worry. Bowing, he said, "Thank you so much, my lord." Lloyd replied, "I'm very happy for you," though in his mind, he was focused on satisfying his greed. The man also mentioned that he had a relative in the neighboring Lacona land who wanted to know if Lloyd would accept an order from him. The man also mentioned that he had a relative in the neighboring Lacona land who wanted to know if Lloyd would accept an order from him. Lloyd thought, "It's finally here, the first stage of my big plan." He planned to use travel expenses as an excuse to raise costs, which he mentioned to the man. Javier understood his intentions. However, Javier was still curious about the part where Lloyd was constructing a road to the mountain. As they ascended the mountains, Lloyd said to Javier, "Pretty soon these mountains will be stripped bare, and an ondal requires an astronomical amount of fuel. These trees won't be enough." Javier replied, "You knew this would happen, but you still." Lloyd interrupted, saying, "That is why I'm laying down the Appian Way." He explained that at the end of the road, they would mine for black coal and sell it at a huge markup. Lloyd mentioned, "Once you get used to ondal, there's no getting out of it." He added that he would offer some discount to the villagers, but very little. Javier thought Lloyd was sneaky and devious. Lloyd acknowledged this, saying, "I know you might think I'm devious, but without doing this, how do you think we're gonna come out of debt?" Javier understood that for now, this was the best plan. He informed Lloyd that it wasn't that the Baron was unaware of the black coal. He had tried to mine it many times, but was unsuccessful due to weak bedrock. Lloyd said confidently, "And they were unsuccessful because of the weak bedrock, but I can do it." He thought to himself that he had the benefit of modern excavation technology, the shield tunneling method, which were new concepts for Javier. Javier decided that for now, they should trust their lord, as he seemed to be a new man with a plan. Lloyd sighed, wishing for a skill that could instantly conjure entire buildings. Here he was, hunched over the ground, painstakingly outlining the construction site with his finger. How he longed to summon 100 tireless workers. The Newman incident had boosted his approval rating with the Baron, Baroness, Javier, and Bayern, granting him a total of 639 RP. He immediately invested these points in leveling up his skills. Now, he desperately needed a way to clear the blockage in the tunnel. His choice fell on the intermediate surveying skill. This ability allowed him to see through objects within a 5-meter radius. With its aid, he identified a safe zone within the collapsed tunnel. However, the real challenge remained, digging a new path as quickly as possible. Human labor alone wouldn't suffice. Podong, exhausted from the extensive road construction, lay listless in bed. Lloyd considered summoning another creature. His ample RP allowed for a powerful option. He initiated the summoning, and out popped another animal, small, cute, and seemingly useless, just like Podong initially appeared. Refusing to be discouraged by appearances, Lloyd instructed the creature to demonstrate its abilities. Weeks passed before the actual operation began. The process unfolded in a fascinating sequence. Leading the charge at the tunnel face was an enlarged Bangle, industriously digging and devouring the dirt. This creature possessed a second skill, digesting the dirt and then launching compacted steel dung towards Javier, who in turn sliced it into uniform lengths. Finally, these segments were used to shore up the surrounding earth. As a knight, Javier couldn't help but question why he was stuck laboring inside a cramped tunnel. Meanwhile, Lloyd barked orders, directing his crew to repeat the process tirelessly. The lack of oxygen within the tunnel started making him dizzy. Thankfully, he'd had the foresight to install ventilation pipes, preventing unconsciousness among the workers. Javier urged Master Lloyd to leave the tunnel and take a well-deserved break alongside the others. "I'm in charge here," Lloyd countered, his voice firm. "And the leader stays on site." Memories of his Korean bosses, who were notorious for delegating work without ever setting foot on the actual site, fueled his resolve to be different. Activating his skill once more, Lloyd was thrilled to detect the presence of black coal. He rallied his team to keep pushing forward, expressing his gratitude for the summoned creature that had significantly accelerated their progress. Reaching the coal layer, he instructed them to dismantle the shield tunneling machine and expand the mining space. "Remember, this is dangerous," Lloyd cautioned right before a disconcerting sound echoed through the tunnel. Another scan with his GPR revealed a new, alarming hole in the wall. A monstrous creature emerged from the breach, leaving everyone stunned. While Javier swiftly drew his sword and began unleashing attacks, Lloyd grabbed a shovel and smashed one of the creature's heads. This wasn't part of the plan. This monstrous army of ants could potentially devastate the entire barony. Thousands of them swarmed the tunnel, and Javier could only manage to hold them off one by one. Panic threatened to overwhelm Lloyd, but Javier's sharp slap brought him back to his senses. "Get a hold of yourself," he roared. "I am," Lloyd defended himself. "I'm coming up with a plan." Time was running out. Javier couldn't hold off the ant horde much longer. Suddenly, an idea struck Lloyd. He grabbed a torch and, to Javier's utter disbelief, proposed, "Let's go inside the ant nest." Though the plan seemed utterly insane, Javier suspected Lloyd had a reason. Together, they plunged into the heart of the swarming darkness. A soldier sprinted towards the mansion, breathlessly relaying the situation in the cave to Lord Frontera. The news of the monstrous ants and Lloyd's predicament sent a shockwave of worry through the Baron. The soldier added that Lloyd had evacuated the workers and Sir Bayern was preparing to seal the mine entrance. Donning his battle armor, Lord Frontera steeled himself for a rescue attempt. Meanwhile, deep within the tunnel, Javier fought a desperate battle against the swarming ants. As they ventured further into the cave, Javier questioned Lloyd, "Are we heading in the right direction?" Lloyd, focused on his search, grunted, "Silence. I'm trying to locate something." While it was a relief that the ants seemed to be abandoning the cave, they were now relentlessly surrounding Lloyd and Javier. With dwindling oxygen reserves, Javier's strength waned as he fought for each breath. Lloyd, however, had a plan. He was searching for a methane gas layer. Coal mines often harbor methane-producing bacteria, resulting in pockets of the flammable gas. Finding one meant an explosive solution to their predicament, blowing up the entire ant colony. After a frantic search, he spotted a promising area. "Cover me while I dig," he yelled to Javier, who continued to fend off the relentless ant horde. A deafening screech echoed through the tunnel, prompting both Lloyd and Javier to clamp their ears shut. From the darkness emerged a monstrous queen ant, far larger and more terrifying than the others. "Can you hold her off for a while?" Lloyd pleaded with Javier. Javier gritted his teeth. "Impossible, but what choice do we have?" With renewed vigor, Javier channeled all his remaining strength into defending himself against the monstrous queen. Observing Javier's desperate struggle, Lloyd redoubled his efforts, digging furiously for the methane pocket. Finally, he found it. Placing the torch near the gas pocket, he instructed a breathless Javier, "Run as fast as you can." They spotted the small tunnel they entered through and scrambled towards it. Just as they reached the opening, Lloyd hurled the torch. A thunderous explosion rocked the tunnel, engulfing the space in flames. Javier, with a selfless reflex, dove over Lloyd, shielding him from the inferno. Outside the tunnel entrance, Lord Frontera paced anxiously, desperate to join the rescue effort. His guards, however, restrained him. After what felt like an eternity, Lloyd emerged from the wreckage, coughing and dazed. Relief washed over him as he saw the successful execution of his plan. But a flicker of panic returned as he noticed the exit blocked by debris from the explosion. Another notification popped up in his vision. "Warning, low oxygen level." With the help of his skill, Lloyd grimly calculated his remaining oxygen supply, enough for just 15 more feet of digging. The urgency of the situation sank in. He had to keep digging or face suffocation. Seeing his unwavering determination, Javier felt a surge of respect for Lloyd. Lloyd's refusal to give up had a profound impact on him, boosting his approval rating for Lloyd by 6 points. This new loyalty earned Lloyd 108 RP, bringing his total to 157. However, the ever-dwindling oxygen level loomed large, prompting Lloyd to desperately reach out for a vital skill upgrade. The scan for Lloyd's existing skills began. He possessed a few abilities: absorbing mana from the surrounding area, processing absorbed mana, and amplification of absorbed mana. Now, a new message appeared: combine these skills into a Srahan core technique. This was the moment Lloyd had been waiting for. He'd practiced every chance he got, even after the duel with Newman. With eager anticipation, he clicked yes. His advanced skill for the Srahan core technique, Single Circle Level 5, was activated. Though he lamented not having a mana heart, he could definitely feel the mana circle within him. His mana amplified to 120%. Typically, skills only improved slightly even with dedicated training. But Lloyd had RP. He needed just 10 RP to level up this core technique. He knew he could boost it to incredible levels in no time. With a resolute click, Lloyd increased the core technique's level, maxing it out at level 10. This powerful upgrade granted him 2 new skills. The first, Energizer, allowed him to move for 10 minutes without experiencing fatigue. However, it had a daily limit of 1 use. The second skill, Power Surge, tripled his mana amplification for 20 seconds, but could also only be used once per day. Without wasting a moment, Lloyd activated Energizer and began digging through the collapsing cave. His oxygen level plummeted, and he could barely see the end. Exhausted, Lloyd sank to his knees, his oxygen dangerously low. Thankfully, the Energizer skill provided its 10-minute reprieve. This was his chance. Utilizing his latent power search ability, the same one he used against Newman, Lloyd surged with renewed energy and attacked the remaining Earth with all his might. Only a small area remained between him and freedom, but even that was too much for his depleted strength. He crumpled to the ground, a pang of regret assaulting him. All he'd ever wanted was a comfortable and peaceful life as the son of a country aristocrat. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the other end of the tunnel. Miraculously, it was Peepadong. Relief washed over Lloyd as he gained access to some precious oxygen. He consoled himself, believing a better life still awaited him. Lord Frontera and Sir Bayern, along with some soldiers, had reached the collapsed section. The soldiers urged Lord Frontera to turn back, citing the danger ahead. With unwavering determination, Lord Frontera ordered them to return, stating his intention to continue alone. But the sight that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. There was his son, Lloyd, emerging from the rubble, Javier on his back. A notification popped up in Lloyd's vision. You overcame your physical limitations in an extreme environment through impressive improvisation. This experience will have a strong impact on your Srahan core technique. He received a new skill, Power Saving Mode, which could be used during periods of extreme exhaustion. Lord Frontera rushed to his son, engulfing him in a tight embrace. Lloyd's strength gave way completely, and he collapsed into his father's arms. Back in the village, the news of Lloyd's heroism spread like wildfire. 2 men discussed how they used to think of Lloyd as nothing more than a troublesome drunkard, admitting they'd been sorely mistaken. Another chimed in, adding how his nephew, who worked in the mine, witnessed Lloyd's leadership firsthand. He recounted how Lloyd prioritized the workers' safety by evacuating them first. The villagers marveled at how Lloyd and Javier had single-handedly faced down the monstrous ants, and how Lloyd had carried Javier back to safety despite his own weakened state. Everyone agreed Lloyd had truly changed. Meanwhile, Javier waited patiently by Lloyd's bedside for him to regain consciousness. As Lloyd opened his eyes, a new message greeted him. All of Baron Frontera's subjects are deeply moved by your heroic courage and sing your praises. You have been awarded a significant amount of bonus RP. His RP had skyrocketed by 500. While Lloyd hadn't set out to be a hero, he couldn't help but be pleased with the substantial RP gain. Weeks after the harrowing ant incident, Lloyd and Javier returned to the mine tunnel. The workers, forever grateful for Lloyd's bravery, showered him with praise. He risked his life for us, one murmured. Unlike other nobles, he embodies true noblesse oblige. Lloyd, however, squirmed under the unfamiliar weight of admiration. 2 weeks had passed since the wild ant disaster, and the mine operations continued smoothly. Safety remained Lloyd's top priority, and he meticulously inspected the tunnels for any potential hazards. As Lloyd scanned the area, Javier questioned his hands-on approach. Why do such dangerous tasks yourself? Why not delegate them to the workers? Lloyd's reply was resolute. Fool, the greater the risk, the more reason for the leader to be at the forefront. That way, no one can question my commitment when the profits roll in. Javier's confusion only deepened. Were Lloyd's intentions truly noble? Reaching the tunnel's end, Lloyd activated his skill and detected a hidden space behind the wall. They began digging, and soon, a curious sight greeted them, an unconscious, bound creature within the cavity. Javier, ever cautious, warned, "This looks dangerous. Let me handle it." Lloyd chuckled. "Hold on, Javier. You're brave, but reckless. What kind of creature is this?" Another worker chimed in, "An orc, of course." Determining if the creature was alive proved easy. Javier explained, "I heard wild ants paralyze their prey for food storage." Lloyd, thrilled at the potential new asset, declared, "Excellent. We've stumbled upon something amazing." When the creature eventually regained consciousness, it eyed Lloyd with a curious smile. Lloyd, it seemed, proposed a task, but the creature, grunting oink after each sentence, vehemently refused. The orc, introducing himself as Arash, declared, "We are orcs, warriors all. We obey only warriors' commands. You, no warrior, cannot order us, oink." Lloyd knew of the orc tradition, presenting the head of a wild ant as proof of their coming-of-age ceremony. Arash, he surmised, must have ventured too deep into the ant cave and been paralyzed. An idea sparked in Lloyd's mind. He showered Arash with congratulations, claiming, "Well done on completing your coming-of-age ceremony." Arash, confused, protested, "I didn't catch any wild ant. This is a failure, oink." Undeterred, Lloyd spun a web of elaborate lies. He convinced Arash he must have forgotten about capturing the queen ant due to the paralysis. "We did it together," he declared. "Thank you for your assistance." Javier, unable to contain himself, grimaced at this audacious fabrication. To further win Arash's trust, Lloyd proclaimed him a great warrior. Elated by the praise, Arash promised to bring 120 orc workers under his command. A week later, Lloyd and Javier arrived at the Sand and Steel Tribe, the village of the wild orcs. However, their request was met with a surprising denial from the tribe leader. Lloyd, bewildered, inquired, "Your Highness, esteemed chief of the Sand and Steel Tribe, could you explain this sudden change of heart?" The chief patiently explained their predicament. "Our warriors require a lot of meat to maintain their muscle mass. We hunt 3 times daily, or risk muscle loss, which signifies the end of our tribe. We cannot spare any warriors for your request." He further elaborated on the spoilage of meat after a single day, necessitating the constant hunt. "Protein and muscle are the lifeblood of our people," Javier observed. "Perhaps we should reconsider." But Lloyd had a different plan brewing. With a sly smile, he challenged, "What if your meat could last for days without spoiling? Wouldn't that free your warriors from hunting so frequently? In exchange, would you consider the orc workers then?" The chief, intrigued and eager to repay the kindness, revealed the true crux of their problem: the risk of muscle loss. A smug Lloyd, however, reassured him, "I can make your meat last for days. No more thrice daily hunts." Lloyd's audacious promise to preserve meat for days sparked a flicker of hope in the orc chief's eyes. Could this scrawny human truly solve their most pressing issue? Javier, ever the pragmatist, remained skeptical. Will Lloyd's ingenuity prevail, or will the orcs reject his offer, leaving them both empty-handed? The answer awaits in the next chapter.